Welcome back from the break brought to you by Fastcase. Now it's time to turn the program over to the ABA Young Lawyers Division. They are going to introduce an issue that is so important to so many of our members, student debt. As you recall, last September, we featured a week on student loan debt relief issues. Today, we want to build on the success we had last year and address this important issue again. Come talk to us.
I'm so excited to talk with you all a little bit today about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, a program that is near and dear to my heart as a public interest attorney. The program is a vital program in a time of limited waiver right now. So the program was actually enacted first back in 2007, and it got bipartisan support. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program is the bridge between low public service salaries and the incredible amount of debt that you get coming out of law school. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program actually forgives the remaining amount of debt that you have for your federal direct loans for public servants after certain conditions are met. It's typically 10 years working within the public service field. And this program is especially important for public interest attorneys, like I stated, like for myself before, who require a JD for their public service work. Law school graduates typically have upwards of 6 figures in educational debt. And when you're entering into the public sector, I can attest that you're not making anywhere near that amount of money. The average starting salary is around $55,000. And the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program has been plagued with a number of issues, making it really hard for people to actually receive their forgiveness. So actually the numbers state that less than 2% of people who actually applied for their forgiveness were actually able to receive their forgiveness up until now. So put that into consideration. The program started back in 2007. And there are actually 2 federal programs now that are in place to help borrowers actually receive their public service loan forgiveness. So the first, the Federal Loan Forbearance under the CARES Act, has paused federal loan payments and provided 0% interest through May 1st, 2022. So that date's coming up soon. And then the second is the Department of Education announced a temporary period during which borrowers can actually receive credit for the payments that actually didn't qualify under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program before. Now, there's a date that's really important to remember. The temporary waiver period expires on October 31st, 2022. That's October 31st, 2022. So the ABA-YLD has been looking at this issue very closely because obviously this is something that impacts a lot of our membership. And we actually did a report diagnosing the problems related to student debt and law school students. So most young lawyers actually struggle to pay off their student loans. And the numbers that we saw from over 1,300 lawyers in this report is that 65% of young lawyers were saying that they suffered from an overwhelming amount of stress because of, you guessed it, debt. And that was a survey that we did, our student loan survey back in 2021. And then also what we've heard is that student loans, they actually impact the ability for people to think about career trajectory and other major decisions that they want to make in their lives. So for example, if someone wants to get married, buy a house, other major purchases, this insurmountable amount of debt is actually impacting their ability to move forward in that way. And so we're so happy that this conversation is continuing to happen. And I'm happy to introduce the co-chair of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Caucus, Congressman Brendan Boyle, who represents the 2nd District of Pennsylvania.
Thanks to the American Bar Association for inviting me to your annual event. I hope the ABA will make student loan debt a real key focus this year. With 45 million Americans holding more than $1.7 trillion in student loan debt, it's critical that we address this crisis. Millions of students took out loans for an education, but overwhelming debt is seriously limiting their choices. We've seen important progress through the Department of Education under the new secretary, Miguel Cardona. He's acted to discharge debts for students who attended those shady for-profit colleges and he started granting students relief under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. We've also seen positive signs that the Biden administration is no longer going to aggressively challenge those who seek discharge from the debt under the undue hardship exception. That's something I have been urging for nearly a decade. These steps by the Department of Education are important, but we also need legislation to help address the student debt crisis. Last year, I joined with Republican Senator John Cornyn of Texas to introduce the Fresh Start Through Bankruptcy Act. This bipartisan bill would restore the ability of student borrowers to seek relief in bankruptcy for federal student loans after 10 years. It would provide a last resort and a path toward financial recovery for millions of student loan debtors who may never get out of debt otherwise. As we work together, support on both sides of the aisle, as we work to raise awareness among the American public, you can help with the ABA. Thanks again for inviting me to join you today.
Is Aaron Sohaski, and I currently serve as the ABA YOD Director of Student Debt and Financial Wellness, and I hail from Detroit, Michigan. A recent ABA YOD survey showed that 97% of law school students applied for loans and that 75% graduated with over $100,000 in debt. This negatively impacts the lives and career choices of many attorneys, in addition to having a broader impact on the American economy and the ability of Americans to access critical legal services. As many of you carrying federal student loans know, student loan repayment is slated to begin on May 1 this year. To recap, the federal government had suspended loan payments, interest accruals, and collections of defaulted federal student loans have all been on hold since the start of the pandemic due to the CARES Act and extensions that have been granted. Now, transitioning back to payment may be difficult for borrowers. In fact, there was a survey conducted in spring of 2021 by the Pew Charitable Trust that found that 67% of borrowers said it would be difficult to afford their student loan payments if they returned next month. For young lawyers, this period was helpful for not only those struggling with repayment, but also allowed people to pay down their loans at essentially a 0% annual rate. Now, this is significant for those legal professionals with an average student debt level of over $100,000. So as part of this ABA Day, we are urging you to participate in this national conversation around student debt. Please consider sending the pre-written letter specifically addressing the forbearance period located within the action panel on the ABA Day website. We appreciate your consideration in reaching out to your members of Congress, asking them to extend this forbearance period and to consider a more permanent solution. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your time and attention on this important matter.
Hello to everyone at the American Bar Association. This is Senator Chuck Schumer, and thank you for letting me share a brief message. First, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your leadership, your advocacy, and especially for organizing the ABA Student Debt Week of Action. This topic that is so important to me, and if we're going to reach our goal of student debt relief for tens of millions of Americans, we're going to have to work together. For generations, higher education's been a ladder up into the middle class. But for too many today, student debt has become an anchor, weighting them down, making it harder to start a family, buy a home, live with financial independence. Over 43 million Americans now hold more than $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. 1 in 5 of all borrowers in default. For those pursuing a career in law, student debt can be especially severe. Over 75% of law school graduates will enter the workforce with over $100,000 in debt. This is unsustainable, simply unsustainable. With Joe Biden in the White House and Democrats in the House and Senate as a majority, the time is now to take action. Earlier this year, I joined with Senator Warren and other Democrats in calling on President Biden to cancel up to $50,000 in student loans for each student. The impact of this step would be seismic. It would mean a new life for millions upon millions of our students, particularly low-income and diverse student loan borrowers crushed by the weight of debt. And as our country is still recovering from the awful destruction of the COVID pandemic, the last thing we should be doing is adding debt burden. of millions to millions of young people trying to find their footing in these uncertain times. With the flick of a pen, President Biden can get it done. I believe it's within his authority, and I promise I'll keep pushing the Biden administration to do it in the weeks and months to come. In the meantime, I want to say thank you to everyone at the ABA for organizing this week's virtual events. We got a lot of work to do to achieve our goal, but because of your advocacy, I'm confident better days lie ahead. Thank you all so much and hope to see you soon.